Hey everybody, this is my video on factoring differences of squares. So for differences of squares, you need to keep in mind that we're trying to take something that is x squared minus y squared, that's just an example, and we're trying to turn it into multiplication. So this minus this, turn it into this times this, usually with parentheses. So this is just the basic outline. You're going to have something, a number, pretty much any number possible minus any number possible, and you can factor it by putting it into a template like this. So I'm just going to show you the template first, and then we can use it in an actual problem. So we've got x squared minus y squared here. So your x is always going to go in the front too, because we know that when we multiply later, x times x is going to get us that x squared at the start. So your y squared is going to be the same thing, but in the back. So then afterwards, if we were to multiply it out, we would get the y times the y, which gets the y squared. So what's interesting about the difference of squares is usually you have to add a second part here to this side that's going to be like something xy, a number and then xy. But when you're doing difference of squares, you don't have to. So all you have to do is think x plus y, x minus y. For difference of squares, x can be any number, y can be any number. That's just how you do it. So I can show you how to do this with an example problem, and that's going to be x squared minus 16. So in this example, you're usually going to see something like this, like an x squared minus this. So when we're factoring this, all we have to do is lay out that same template. So we know we're going to have it in parentheses, and usually when you factor something, like I said, you're going to have that extra part, but since we notice x can be x squared goes with x squared. These two things here are both something squared. It's x being squared. And then on the right side, we notice that this y squared is just squaring some number that can be y, can be any number. And in this case, we have 16 as the y squared. So that means that 16 is the same as 4 squared. So it wouldn't work if it was, say, 15. Difference of squares, you have to think about the squares. So x is being squared, so it's a square. And then 4 is being squared to get 16. So basically, this same thing right here, x squared minus 16, we're saying x squared minus 4 squared. And if you want to think about it like that at the start, you're always going to have two numbers, one being squared and the next being squared, and it's always going to have to be a minus. So that's what that difference means. When you say difference, it's always going to mean minus. So you're going to have something squared minus something squared, and that's what you need to factor using difference of squares. And this is going to come up a lot, so you need to be able to notice when you have a difference of squares and then be ready to be able to factor it. So I'm going to go ahead and just use this upper thing. Since we know it's a difference of squares, now we have to identify what's our x and what's our y based on the template at the start, at the beginning. X squared minus y squared equals x plus y, x minus y. So what's our x and what's our y? Well, our x is just going to be x, obviously. I'll put it up here. The x is just going to be the x as always, because that's what's being squared. And I'm just going to make it easier by just drawing parentheses up here, because x represents any number and the y can represent any number or variable. So in this case, our x is just x and our y is going to be 4. So you see how we're using 4 and just squaring it to get what we want, to get the y squared. You can use that just like the y up there and do that. So you're going to have x plus 4, x minus 4. So that's the template. When you have your x and y identified, you know that x is x and 4 is y, you can just put it in that template like that. And let me show you why this works, because if you remember the multiplying binomials video that I just did, when you multiply binomials, what you do is you multiply that by that, and then that by that, and that, and that. So if we were to just quickly multiply this out, you're going to have x squared, because that's the x times x, and then minus 4x, and that's the x times the negative 4, then plus 4x minus 16. So what I just did was multiply that binomial out, or that binomial multiplication out. So this is what that is all out, all multiplied out. But if you notice, we've got a minus 4x and a plus 4x. And what happens when you take minus 4 plus 4? They cancel out. So that is going to end up being the same exact thing as x squared minus 16, which is what we had at the beginning of that problem over here. So what that means is that we can take a difference of squares with anything and put it into that template, and we're going to get the original thing. So this is just an alternative to using longer ways of factoring, because like there's factor by grouping, there's factor by just the normal thing where you multiply a times c, you know, but this is just an easier way that you can use if you notice that it's a difference of squares. So I'm just going to do one more quick one over here. We're going to have 9 squared, actually, you know what, just 9 minus x squared. So I'm going to do this one with you, and then I'm going to give you an example problem for you to do for yourself if you want to. But let me just show you how this would work. Well, we can tell that it's a difference of squares because, first of all, it has the minus sign. Second of all, though, on the right side, we have x being squared, so that's something being squared. And on the left side, 9 is the same as 3 squared. So what we have here is 3 squared minus x squared. And if you want to put those parentheses around it to make it easier, because we can check that we have something being squared minus something being squared. So if we were to simplify that out and use our template, we would just get 3 plus x, 3 minus x. So that's going to be your final answer. That's the problem being factored. So what I'm going to do real quick is give you an example problem to do on your own real fast, and then I'll pause the video. So your example problem will be 25 minus y squared. So I'm going to want you to fill in that template on your own if you want to, or you can just wait and see the answer. But I'd recommend you do it on your own. So I'll give you a second to do it, and then I'll play the video again. All right, I hope you did it on your own, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the answer. So you should notice immediately that it's the difference of squares because we've got something being squared minus something being squared, and those things are 5 squared minus y squared. So we can just use that to fill in our template, which will be 5 plus y, 5 minus y. And if we were to multiply that out, we would get 25 minus y squared. So the whole point of that kind of thing is because it can work either way. So usually you'll see your x squared first, but it doesn't have to be first. Sometimes it can be second, like there, and it can be a y, it can be an x, it can be anything. As long as you have something being squared minus something being squared, you can use difference of squares to factor it, and then after that, you can find the solutions. So that'll be all for this video. If you have any questions, you can email me. And yeah, I'll see you guys next video.